Hi, welcome to the first baseballblogs.net mid-season roundup. We'll be doing a roundup on how the teams are going and how the league standings look at the moment. As of today, the Australian Baseball League has been going really well, and we're almost halfway through the season. Sitting on top of the ladder is the Perth Heat, who have taken the position from Sydney after a great 5-game winning streak, and also after Melbourne beat Sydney in a classic series in Melbourne this weekend. Sydney have lost their top spot. They're down to second now. Underneath them, in third position, is the Adelaide Bite. Underneath them are Melbourne, who have gotten there after one series. They were on the bottom of the league and have jumped up, leapfrogged Brisbane into fourth spot. And in the bottom two spots, we have the Brisbane Bandits and the Canberra Cavalry. Now, of course, the teams want to land in the top four, as that's what will give them a finals berth and a shot at the Claxton Shield next year. So Brisbane and Canberra will be trying to get out of their bottom positions there. Brisbane are quite close. They're on 8 wins. Melbourne are on 8 also, and Adelaide in third spot are on 9. So the table is very tightly contested right now, and no one's out at the moment. Anyone can still make finals and still win the whole shield. Alright, now I want to talk about this weekend's series between the Melbourne Aces and the Sydney Blue Sox in Melbourne. We wrote a post about this on the website saying how important this series was, because the table was in an interesting position. You had the Sydney Blue Sox on top of the table with 10 wins, and the Melbourne Aces on the bottom with 4. And of course, Melbourne had a little bit of a slow start, losing to Canberra away, and then having a few of their home games against Canberra washed out. In fact, their first home game was greatly received by the fans. About over 2,000 people showed up, but the game was washed out, so they were unlucky about that. And in fact, the whole weekend was pretty much washed out. They didn't get much baseball happening until the last day, so they had quite a slow start to the season. Sydney, of course, had a really good start to the season, and they were soaring basically up on top of the ladder. And of course, if Melbourne had lost any of or too many of these games against Sydney, they would have really been in a bad way. But we wrote a post saying that if they could win 4 or 5 of their games, that it would really put them in contention, and it would condense the ladder. And that's exactly what happened. In a classic series, Melbourne won 4 games out of 5. The series was extended because some of the earlier games in Sydney had been postponed, and so they played them in Melbourne, making it a full 5-game series. And the series started really dramatically with, in the first game on Friday night, Sydney were 4 runs to the good in the 8th innings, 4 runs up, and Melbourne didn't give up. They scored 4 runs at the bottom of the 8th and pushed the game into a 10th innings, and then an 11th innings and a 12th, and unbelievably it went all the way up to a 15th innings. At one stage, Melbourne had the bases loaded with only 1 out, but they just couldn't manage to get that last run. Sydney were quite lucky. They got out of a few sticky positions there, but then right at the end, Melbourne scored a beautiful walk-off homer to win the game, and yeah, it was a pretty emphatic win for them. You can see the pictures of it there. And I think that really gave them the confidence going into the next 4 games, because they won 3 out of 4 of them. And Sydney managed to win one of the games on the Saturday, but Melbourne had won the other one. And then today, Melbourne won both with quite high-scoring games too. In the first game there, Melbourne won 12-5, and in the second game this afternoon they won 18-3, so it's convincing wins. They're playing great baseball. Both of those games actually were only in 7 innings also, so they were shorter matches as they tried to fit all 5 games into the one weekend. And yeah, now both teams find themselves in an interesting position. Sydney, if they had taken a sweep, as some Sydney fans perhaps thought they might have, because Sydney have been playing quite strong, they really would have been nailed to the top of the ladder. But now they are going to have to fight for a top spot, and then maybe even for a finals position, because a lot of the teams are playing quite good. I think we've seen some good baseball, and it's still quite unpredictable. It's hard to sort of discern which teams are going to come forward here. Of course, Canberra, sitting on the bottom, have had a bit of poor luck, and they've probably played not quite as good as they hoped to. They've actually got a shocking away record, which is 10 losses in a row, and they haven't won any games away, which is a shame for them. They've also seemed to have a lot of rain problems. Wherever they go, the rain comes. When they came down to Melbourne, it got washed out, and then they went to Adelaide and it got washed out. So yeah, the bad weather seems to be following Canberra. But as we progress into the second half of the season, I think it's safe to say that anything could happen, and that by the end of the season we could see a total jumbling of the table. Now, for teams to watch out for, I think Sydney, despite this pretty big defeat against the Aces, their traditional rivals, I think that they'll still be quite strong. That may have been a little wake-up call to show them it's not going to be as easy as perhaps they thought, but I still think that they're strong enough to land on top. I still think they may be the best team in the ABL right now. Hard to say though. I mean, with Melbourne, they've been a little more inconsistent with 8 wins and 9 losses, but they've shown some extremely strong baseball at times, particularly in one game against the Cavalry, and definitely in this weekend's series against Sydney, where they played quite phenomenally. I think they're definitely a team to watch out for now that they're off the bottom, and they're only a one win behind Adelaide, who is sitting above them in 3rd position, and they're 3 wins behind Sydney, who is 2nd, and 4 wins behind Perth, who is sitting on top. So anything's still possible. I could see Sydney reclaiming their top position over the next couple of series, definitely. It'll be interesting to see Sydney and Perth play off and to see how they go against each other. So I think we've got a few great series coming up, and if you're a fan of the teams, you should get down to your local clubs matches and check them out. I'm sure the clubs are looking for all the support they can get, and especially when the league is in such a it's in its infancy really, so the support the fans can give is huge for the teams. So if your club is looking for volunteers, I know a few clubs were looking for volunteers over the last few weeks and months. If your club is looking for volunteers, send an email in, tell them that you're available, and if not, you should still head down to the games and check it out, because some of the baseball's been good, and we've had some really exciting matches. So yeah, if you're lucky enough to avoid the rain, then you're probably in for a treat. So yeah, stay tuned, and you can check out the site for more updates, and as the season progresses, we might make a few more of these little roundup videos.